Suddenly, everybody was an author. Everybody could publish, everybody could write. The men who had controlled access to information were now irrelevant, and the establishment was crushed in a flood tide of new publications. New ideas multiplied, and so did conflicts. Violence followed and led to 100 years of war. No, I am not talking about the invention of blogging or social media. I am talking about the invention of the printing press, and the radical 15th century technology that destabilized the church and undermined monarchies and brought us the Reformation. As people don't necessarily remember, it also brought us religious wars, as I said, 100 years of them. But if my description of the 15th century did sound an awful lot like the 21st century, that's not an accident. For we are living through an equally transformative and equally revolutionary moment, even if we don't always acknowledge it. Why are so many elections in so many democracies taking such surprising turns? Why are nationalists and xenophobes suddenly gaining support in countries with really profoundly different economics and different histories, from Poland, and the Philippines to Britain and the US? Well, here's my guess. Just as the printing press broke the monopoly of the monks and priests who controlled the written word in the 15th century, the internet and social media have, within the space of a few short years, broken the monopoly of what we used to call the mainstream media, and in doing so have undermined the democratic political institutions to which it was connected. Now, look around the democratic world. Everywhere, large newspapers and powerful broadcasters are disappearing, and these old-fashioned news organizations might have been flawed, but many of them had as their founding principle at least a theoretical commitment to objectivity. At least in principle they were supposed to do fact-checking. And at least in theory, they were supposed to be working on behalf of the general public interest. They served as a filter, eliminating egregious conspiracy theories. And in democracies, they also created the possibility of a single national conversation, one public debate. In many democracies, there is now no common debate, let alone a common narrative. People don't have the same facts, and they don't agree about what happened yesterday. How can you have a political debate about something if you don't even agree on what the debate is supposed to be about? Social media, of course, contributes to this phenomenon and has accelerated it by allowing people to select the news and opinion that they hear, whether it's factual or not. And the tendency to seek out comforting narratives has created homogeneous clusters online. They get called echo chambers or filter bubbles. People now get their news from their close-knit, ideologically similar friends. And most members of an echo chamber share the same prevailing worldview, and they interpret news through this common lens. This phenomenon contributes to this growth of hyper-partisanship and intense polarization, and it also contributes to the distrust of normal politics and normal politicians and political institutions, even in democracies. As a result, there are some democracies in which there's now really no national debate, no central debate at all. And instead, on the internet, where readers and writers feel distant from one another and from the issues they describe, has become the perfect medium for irony and parody and cynical jokes. Yeah. It's not an accident that a plethora of ironic, parodic, and joke political candidates are suddenly winning elections, again, in a huge variety of countries, wide variety, from Iceland, Italy, Serbia. Some of them are harmless, some of them are not. But one thing has become clear, and that is that a generation of young people now treats elections as an opportunity to show their disdain for democracy by voting for people who don't even pretend to have coherent political views. And this is unsurprising, since voting is really not that much different from liking something online, except that it requires slightly more effort. More worrying is that this new information network is uniquely conducive to the spread of false rumors, whether they're natural or imposed from the outside. American and French voters have recently become aware that the Russian government organizes leaks inside democracies and then launches trolling campaigns that make use of supposedly secret material, however banal, spinning it then into elaborate conspiracy theories and stories. But Russia has actually been using these tactics to great effect in Central and Eastern Europe for many years. Just to name a few, governments in Hungary and Slovakia and Poland, just to begin with, have been overthrown thanks to secret tapes or leaks with Russian or Secret Service origins. And this hasn't ended. This is not over. German officials who I spoke with a few months ago are now preparing themselves for heavy Russian interference in the upcoming German elections as well. Everybody knows this is coming, just as they did in France. But now the question is, who's in charge of stopping it? Who is supposed to fight back against manipulation? For that matter, whose job is it to bridge these partisan divides? And here we come to the black hole at the heart of the problem. Because the answer is there's no one. No one is responsible. Democratic governments don't censor the internet, and we wouldn't want them to. They aren't in the habit of funding or backing independent media, and if they were, it would cease to be independent. The militaries of France and Germany or the United States, they're not set up to fight information wars. They're not going to get involved in social media battles inside their own countries. NATO can control tanks, but it's not going to wade into social media wars, even when they have very clear national security connotations. And even counterintelligence services, and I've talked to some of them, are queasy about this. They don't want to take part in political debates inside their own democracies. It isn't their job to penetrate echo chambers or to counter conspiracy theories, or even to work on how to bring back trust to democratic institutions that have been undermined by this culture of parody, let alone to reinvigorate democratic newspapers, not their job. And although they'll tell you they can, and although I know there are people who hope they will, I don't think tech companies are going to be able to solve this problem either. There's never going to be a single technical gadget or a program that will measure truth. There aren't any investments that are going to persuade people to read quality media if it no longer exists. Censorship, frankly, from Google or Facebook isn't going to be, in the long term, any more acceptable or successful or useful than censorship from a government either. But if public institutions can't do it, and military institutions can't do it, and tech companies can't do it, then who can? And the answer, and I had a chance to think about this again, listening to the previous three speakers, and I'm looking out at this audience, I think I see the answer as well, for the answer is you. You and the people who you work with, the people who still have faith in democratic institutions, people who want them to succeed, people who want to live in just societies run according to the rule of law, people who are fighting against dictatorships and illiberal states where men in charge decide what is true and what is not. You are going to find the solution to this extraordinary earthquake, one that we're just beginning to understand, this new information revolution, and you will create the antibodies to fake news, and I think you're going to do it in a lot less than 100 years. You and the people who you work with are going to invent the new forms of media, that will capture the hearts and minds of voters and not just their attention. You'll create the disinformation trackers and the fake news monitors that will help people understand what they are reading and hearing and transmit it to them in a way they understand and empathize with. And you will find ways to teach children and adults to be literate in the 21st century, helping them learn to distinguish propaganda from real stories on the internet. And you will help politicians and judges and civil servants learn to use these new tools to make their work more transparent and accountable, and you're going to find ways to protect their privacy at the same time, too. This is now part of the definition of what it means to be a civic activist. When you transmit your messages now to the world, you have to keep this in mind. You're not just transmitting an idea, you're working against dishonesty and against truth, and you have to make that part of your program. But I do think you'll do it. You'll find ways to penetrate echo chambers and reach people who are so distrustful that they've come to believe in preposterous conspiracy theories. You'll touch people who seem hardened to the needs of their fellow citizens, and you'll move people who are in the thrall of extremist or xenophobic ideologies. I know that you'll do all these things because you're here. You made the effort to come here, and because you care enough about democracy to be here, and because you know that at this moment in time, even the most stable democracies, even the United States and even Western Europe, are challenged by lies as never before. And the fight against disinformation and the fight to restore public sanity to public debates has to begin with civic activism, and so therefore it begins in this room. And I can't wait to find out how you're going to do it. Thank you.